Hey, what's up guys, Matt with the Movement System. In this video, we're gonna show you the secret to unlocking hip mobility. Hip mobility is something that I've struggled with for 10 years, and it took me getting a doctorate of physical therapy, a really high level understanding of biomechanics, and a bunch of experience with a bunch of people to really understand how it works. Previously, I had just done a bunch of stretches that always felt like it made my hips worse. I was seeing a bunch of people who are already really mobile doing these stretches, but every time that I did it, it just caused a hip pinch, it caused pain, and it never really improved my mobility, definitely not lasting mobility. But by understanding biomechanics, I was able to understand how to essentially shift the hip posteriorly in the socket to allow more room for hip rotation. This is really the key, and I want to share it with you guys today, so let's go ahead and dive into it. All right, so the motion that we're going to be talking about today specifically is hip internal rotation. That's our ability to take our knee up and then out to the side like this. As you can see, I'm pretty limited. We typically want to see our athletes get to at least 30 degrees. And for me, this is around 10 degrees of hip internal rotation. I'm gonna work on it for a little bit, see what it looks like. And I would encourage you guys to test and do the same. So take your knee, march it up, pull your heel out to the side as far as you can. That's gonna be your starting point. We're gonna do 2 different drills, and then we're gonna test again at the end. So let's talk about how we're gonna do this. What we're gonna try to do is to shift our hip posteriorly in the socket. So if we just try to crank into internal rotation right now without doing anything at the hip, we're probably just gonna get more of a pinch. So you can see that with something like a 90-90 stretch or an end range liftoff, where we're really just trying to push farther and farther into the front of the hip. And there's no room to go there. So these stretches often don't feel very good for people who are limited in this motion, and they don't last. Instead, we're gonna try a different approach. That approach is gonna be 2 steps. It's first gonna be facilitating the adductor, and then it's secondly gonna be hinging. Both of these steps are going to help us shift that hip posteriorly in the socket to create more room in the front of the hip to rotate into. That way that hip rotation feels better and you have more motion and it lasts. Let's go ahead and get started with the adductor. All right, let's go ahead and start off with step number 1, which is facilitating the adductor. If you have a foam roller, that can be really helpful, but it's not 100% necessary. What we're gonna do to test first is to sit upright with our knees at about a 90-degree angle, and then to try to pull one kneecap back. So what we're gonna do is first pull one kneecap back and in, and then we're gonna try the other kneecap back and in. And what you might notice is that one is a lot harder than the other. For me, the right side is a lot harder to pull in and back because I don't have quite as much room in the front of the hip. That can be from a number of things. It can be from previous injuries. It can be from just my hip anatomy, and a lot of different things. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on it. So I'm gonna use this foam roller. I'm gonna squeeze inward on the foam roller, and then specifically on that right knee, I'm gonna pull back. So I'm gonna do this for about 5 seconds back, and then relax and come forward. Pull in and back for about 5 seconds, squeezing that foam roller, and then coming forward. So if you're looking from above, you should see that foam roller kind of twist as you're squeezing in and then pulling back. If you don't have a foam roller, you can also use a soccer ball or something like that, or just even hold your hands in between and try to squeeze and then pull back. What you should feel is that adductor, especially up that inner thigh, at the top of the inner thigh, pulling in and pulling back. If you want to, you can even do this when laying down on the ground, and that does help some people find even more of that compression and internal rotation. Once you've felt that adductor working pretty hard and we're moving as much as we can for about a minute or so, then we're gonna drop the foam roller and we're gonna get into a single leg hinge movement. I'm working on the right leg, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plant my right foot down on the ground, and I'm gonna take the opposite foot and I'm gonna push it against the wall. So if you're doing this against a wall or a box or anything, you're gonna push one foot back slightly into the wall. The other leg is where you're gonna be hip hinging. Really important, we need pressure on the base of the big toe and the inside of the heel here. That's where we're gonna keep our foot pressure, so that way we're biasing towards that internal rotation motion. With the pressure in the big toe and the inside of the heel, now we're gonna hip hinge, and we're not gonna push our knee and our hip back like this. We're gonna keep that knee bent, keep that knee over top of the shoelaces, and just push the crease of the hip backwards. So the goal here is gonna be to reach the opposite hand to the opposite shin. So I'm gonna start here. I'm gonna keep that bend of the knee, push the crease of the hip back, and I'm gonna take the fingertips and I'm gonna trace them down the shin as far as I can go until I feel a really big stretch in the glute. The goal here is to work on posteriorly shifting that femur in the socket to allow that hip hinge motion to feel a big stretch in the posterior capsule and the glute, and to create more room in that hip to be able to internally rotate. So again, crease of the hip goes back, knees bending, and we're tracing the fingertips down the shin. We want to go for a good solid about 8 or 9 repetitions here, nice and slow and controlled, really shifting the hip posteriorly, feeling that big stretch. Don't let yourself come out to the outside of the foot here. Keep the pressure on the inside of the foot and keep that adductor turned on as we're hinging. You can use an exhale here as you're tracing the fingertips down the shins, keeping the pressure on the inside of the foot, feeling that stretch in the glute. Hold that for a couple seconds at the bottom and stand up. Once you get a good quality 5 to 8 repetitions here, feeling that good stretch through the back of the hip, then we're gonna stand up and we're gonna retest our motion. So same thing as before, you're gonna face the camera or face forward, and then we're gonna take the knee up, and then we're gonna internally rotate. And actually, it feels a lot better at the hip, and you probably see, aside from my balance, motion, probably about another 10 or 15 degrees of good quality internal rotation here. This is only working on it for about a minute or so on 2 different exercises. You're gonna have to do this consistently for a few weeks, working that adductor, working those hip hinge motions, but over time, your hip should feel a lot better. And then if you want to, you can go into some of those stretches that we showed before with them feeling a lot better now. So hopefully that motion is really helpful for you. I know I've had a lot of clients who have been locked up with their hips for years, and just a few repetitions of using that adductor, of using a good hip hinge and feeling that stretch, they've been able to unlock 10 or 15 degrees of motion that they haven't had in years. This leads to being able to walk better, jump better, run better, and just overall feel better through their hips. If this worked for you and you were able to get more motion, go ahead and comment more movement or more mobility in the comments below, and I'll give you like a thumbs up or something because I'm excited for you that you were able to get more motion. And lastly, if you're a coach who wants to learn techniques like this to assess movement and improve movement for your clients, then you can check out our new course, Movement Assessment 101. This course is the exact biomechanics-based movement assessment that I take with my clients to improve their mobility and create lasting changes. When you can free up an additional 10, 15, 20 degrees of range of motion for someone who's restricted and then integrate that into strength, it can be really beneficial for changing the way that your clients feel during their workouts and creating lasting change. Also, if you're certified as a strength and conditioning specialist, this course does earn you 10 hours of continuing education towards maintaining your certification. If you guys have any questions about hip mobility or you want a follow-up on how to improve external rotation, let me know in the comments below. Subscribe so you don't miss any future videos, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.